Hey, greetings YouTube, Performance Reviews, where I give you the review from the technician's point of view. And today we're going to talk about Miele versus Kenmore. And we're going to compare the Miele C1 Power Team versus the Kenmore 600 series Pop and Go. And the first thing you're going to notice, folks, is the size. And that's going to be a recurring theme throughout this video. It's unavoidable. Now, if you're new to the channel, we do real-world vacuum reviews from the technician's point of view. So we're going to do a maneuverability test, a pickup test, a suction test. We'll even go in the shop and talk about the repairability and the expendables of these machines. So stay tuned. We have a lot of good information in this video. And if you're new, hit that subscribe and bell notification so you never miss a new vacuum video. Let's talk about size. It is the elephant in the room. The power heads are about the same width, and the wand is a little bit taller on the Miele, but that's not really a huge difference. So let's get those out of the way. Let's talk about the canister. That is a huge difference between them. It just dwarfs the Miele. I guess you could technically say it's closer to the Miele C3 in size. And yeah, it is closer to the Miele C3 in size, but gosh, the Miele C3 is still much smaller than this machine. So, and the reason we're not going to compare the Miele C3 to this is the Miele C3 is a high-end product for the distinguished buyer. And if you've had a Miele or price is not an issue, you're already just going to buy a C3. You probably don't need this video. I do have a Miele comparison video if you need to know the differences. I think at first glance, the included accessories of the Kenmore look better on paper. And there are some things that are better. One of which is not the wand, which is extremely bulky on the end compared to the Miele, despite the Miele having a couple more inches, which again, ask her, it might make a difference. The hard floor tool is, well, it's dwarfed by the Miele hard floor tool, and they do not make a wider OEM hard floor tool, and this has its own proprietary fitting on it, unfortunately. The other thing I will say is, again, size does matter. The Kenmore crevice tool is of good size. Again, they do make a longer one for Miele if you choose. The other thing is the dusting brush. Again, much better that it comes with. And the upholstery tool, I'm going to say, is better with the Miele. And the reason I'm going to say that is this motor in here is actually not strong enough to turn this brush when you put it on carpet, making the electrical part of this almost useless. So this brush is better. All right, as you can see, they have similar length hoses, similar length wands. I think one difference that's noticeable right off the bat, the Miele 228 nozzle actually lies completely flat, where the Kenmore nozzle does not. And the wand on the Miele is maybe 4 inches longer. And I'm sure as the couple of ladies who are gonna watch this will tell you that 4 inches does make a difference. I cannot get over the difference between these handles. This handle feels small in my hand, but it is large in size. This handle gives me plenty of room to hold and is much smaller in size. So if you're trying to get in or around a tight area, you will find that the Miele handle is much nicer to use. Now, with the Miele, I can extend the handle like so and just park the nozzle. And while it does seem a little uneasy, it is going to stay there. I do not have the handle extended on the Kenmore, and it just wants to tip over all the time. And if I actually extend it where I'm going to use it, well, it is a tipsy girl. So be aware of that if you decide to go with the Kenmore. As far as the nozzles go, I've noticed that the Miele nozzle lays flat, where the Kenmore will not. You have to lift it up like that. So even though the Kenmore is physically shorter in front, it actually can't get as far under things as the Miele nozzle. Now, those unaware, the Miele nozzle is based on a Visselwerk EBK 360, custom made for Miele, which means this nozzle is well vetted other applications. I do want to just real quick talk about underneath these. So the Kenmore has a tendency to really tangle up with hair the way this is made. Again, it's not very aerodynamic inside as it should. Because this nozzle is newer, it is aerodynamic inside. It's also made by Visselwerk. Again, Their nozzles are legendary. This is going to be tangle resistant. There is a line you can cut any hair off. Also, the shape of this brush resists hair. So that's just something to be aware if that's a concern of you. I'd also say the soft rubber wheels on this, and that rubber is pretty darn thick compared to the Kenmore, which is already starting to rub off on my example. What you think, Oreo? Now I want to talk about what is actually on board of the canister. They both have a full bag check indicator. The Miele's is a airflow. It will progressively slide, and it seems to work at any altitude. At my high altitude, the Kenmore one does not work, so it's something to be aware of. The power switch on the Kenmore is conveniently located on the hose, where with the Miele, it's just a simple on and off. And there's a suction control on the body, where it's a slider on the hose. They both have the ability to do carpet and hard floor from the hose, so that's nice. But the Miele C1 is a little bit more basic. The other thing that's very clever about the way that Miele did it is the geometry of where these are on the hose means that even if you hit a wall, it's never going to touch. The accessories are never going to touch. So again, smarter than it looks, but made in Germany, designed in Germany, versus made in China and designed sometime in the 80s. And that's where some of these big differences are going to come. On the bottom of the canisters, again, you tell me about size. The Miele has a caster system where the Kenmore has these big wheels and this very long wheelbase, which means as you're using it, the Miele will move in any which direction. The Kenmore, as you're using it, it has a tendency to lift up or roll, and it has a much bigger turning radius on there. Now let's talk about filtration, because that's huge. The Miele is a sealed system, and it's sealed in a few different ways. You do have to, on the C1, undo this cord here that is kind of a con with the Miele. It opens up, and we have a very large bag that self-seals when we pull it out. And there is one more detail about this bag that almost every vacuum has, which is a gasket like this. This is a very big detail because this means all the dust and the debris, the fine stuff, moves into the bag. Like so. You have a pre-motor filter, and then you have the HEPA filter, which has a nice double gasket on it, and you can see the motor right there where it's in its own compartment, sealed up right there. So that's what's inside the Miele. And I guess a lot of people do ask what this is. This is just sound deadening on there. Inside the Kenmore, we have about the same size bag. But what's different is there's no gasket on the bag, which means a lot of the fine debris moves around the bag and into the compartment. And this cardboard fitting has a tendency to leak dust around it because it's only relying on this gasket right here, which gets chewed up and deforms the bag when you put it in. And somebody in my review video said, oh, you're using generic bags. I'm using the OEM manufactured bags. They have several different names on them, but these are the actual spec bags. This is made in the same factory as if you were to buy them that say Kenmore. One thing that is kind of clever about both is they both have an attempt so that you can't shut them without the bag in place. So that is good. That's thoughtful. And again, you can see the gasket on the outside of this Miele. It's very thick versus the very thin gasket here. The other thing is, let's talk about the HEPA filter. First of all, Miele is using a plastic HEPA filter frame and has a nice good seal. And you can also get, in place of this HEPA filter, a charcoal or a pad filter. So you're not stuck buying HEPA filters if you don't need them. These guys, the frame moves a lot. It's cardboard, and the gasket's not even complete. On top of that, there are holes behind these wheels, and not all the air actually makes it through the HEPA filter. So this is not a sealed system. Again, if you have any sort of allergies, you should just rule out the Kenmore. right away. So the Miele has a shorter cord at 19 feet, where the Kenmore has a 25-foot cord. Again, Miele does offer higher-end machines with longer cords. And they both have a cord rewind where you press the button and they retract into the machine. And yeah, that's the thing I found with this Kenmore, and really anytime I see one of these. It's a lot slower, a lot more tired on the Kenmore. Let's go ahead and see how much suction both of these machines have. Let's start with the Kenmore. So the Kenmore gets about 45 inches of working vacuum and about 75 inches sealed. Pretty good numbers. Well, 50 inches of working vacuum is pretty impressive, and 85 inches sealed isn't bad either for a mile above sea level. We're going to do a standard carpet pickup test of breakfast cereal, fine sand, cat litter, and not so fresh animal hair. We've also switched to the studio mic, so you're going to hear the real sound of these machines running as we're doing this pickup test. Alright, they both did pretty good. I hate to say it, but they look the same from a distance. Let's see how they did. No pet hair. No pet hair. No cat litter. A little bit of cat litter. Oh, yeah, there's a little bit of, there we go. Yeah, a little bit of cat litter left behind. The fine sand, you can see a little bit right here. On this, you can see a little bit here. I went a little heavy on the fine sand for both of these, but Miele looks a little bit better, but I'll let you be the judge there. And then, of course, the breakfast cereal is gone. Now, I do want to just, real quick, yep, there was some cat litter, then piece breakfast cereal floating around in this head. Nothing in the Miele head. And that is a difference when you're using them, is you'll notice that the Kenmore head seems to let stuff bounce around where the Miele head just sucks it up. Alright, we're once again using the studio mic. I've lowered these nozzles to their lowest settings. Let's see how they do on hard floor. See how the Miele did? Again, right away, they look like they did the same to me from a distance. A little bit of fine sand. A little bit of fine sand. Alright, I'm going to say that these nozzles on hard floor seem to clean the same, to me at least. I'm just going to ask you to take my word for it, folks, but if you use the Kenmore hard floor nozzle, it will clean that fine sand just fine. And you can get either of these nozzles with the Miele. They both work excellent on hard floor. So, again, if you're doing a lot of hard floor cleaning, you'll switch to one of these. But this is worst case scenario with the power nozzle. I'm going to do my best to show you the maneuverability between these two because it is very different. I think the first thing to keep in mind as we're making this video is that the Miele nozzle is based on a Visselwerk EBK 360, and it is one of the most maneuverable nozzles on the market, where this lacks the swivel neck. So that's something to keep in mind. And as you can see, the maneuverability of the Miele is a big advantage when you're cleaning. And if you go to your local dealer, I'll put a link below on how to find your local dealer, and you give one of these a test drive, you're gonna feel the difference. And if you're coming from the Kenmore, you're gonna feel the difference. And the whole thing is going to be a much better experience. Well, Oreo, what do you think of these two? Which would you prefer? Looking at it from this angle, you can really see how much more petite the Miele is compared to the Kenmore. And now that we've done a suction test and I've showed you the Miele has slightly more suck than the Kenmore, the size of the Kenmore really doesn't make any sense if you didn't know that it was a leftover design from the 80s. Is the value proposition there with the Miele versus the Kenmore? Obviously, you're going to have to be the judge of that. Now, my 2 cents is, I know in 10, 15, 20 years, the Miele will still be here and is repairable. And then I know in less than 5 years, you will be throwing away this Kenmore and replacing it. Now, you might have had a family member who's had a Kenmore for 10,000 years. That is not the same Kenmore we are reviewing today. It is not the same company, so don't mistake the two. I will say, upon using these, the sound difference to me between the Miele and the Kenmore is huge. Also, the maneuverability of the Miele is huge to me personally. So at the time of filming, and I'll have links below that benefit the channel if you want to help us out, Kenmore is about $350, and the Miele is between $789 and $899, depending on the exact version of the C1 you get. You can either get the C1 Cat and Dog, which comes with a lesser warranty, or you can get a more deluxe warranty with the Home Care, which is the red version you see here. Either way, go down to your brick and mortar dealer if you want a Miele. You will get a better deal in store than online typically. If you have one of these, I'd love to hear from you. Please comment below. Thanks for watching and have a great day. And here is Oreo's final opinion.